believe my colleagues will be joining me shortly, but we'll go ahead and get started because we're past time. And we'll jump right into the agenda items. And the first one of which is the action items is information only. And I had no questions about the one information only item, and not seeing any other committee members here, so we'll go ahead and move into the abstracts. The first one of which is the Every Child Art Experience Grant. So Mr. Baldwin.
Hi, thank you. Yes,
Here we go.
applied for and received the Connecticut Office of the Arts grant, Every Child Art Experience, to bring 30 students to a play. We're taking them to Sanctuary City in Hartford. The grant covers going to the play, transportation, and lunch for them based on the timing. And that's part of our effort to get kids involved in the arts as much as possible. Since the pandemic, we started an after-school drama program and are trying to expose kids as much as we can. So we're excited to have the opportunity. Kids will be going on April 25th.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Yarborough, it's good to see you. We just started in on the action items. There's just the one information only item. If you had questions on that, I'll come back to that. But right now we're just on the very first abstract.
Thank you.
So, and I had no questions on that one. I don't know if you did.
None for me.
All right, sounds like a great thing. Yep.
Thank
You had
you.
a list of adds to the list of great things that happened at our schools like New Haven Academy. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move into the second one, which is an open choice grant. So this is Ms. Bonanno.
Yes, so I'm here tonight to present the abstract for the open choice grant. The total grant this year is $317,000 and some change. You'll see a chart attached to the abstract that breaks down the total number of students per school that come into the district through open choice and the revenue that is going into each school of this grant. And so this will be used to offset some of the costs associated with operating the pre-K programs at Salentano and Conti West Hills, and some of the additional programming at the other schools listed on the chart.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions from the committee? The only question I had, I'm trying to remember, is this is the totality of the number. There's currently, as of October 1st, 101 students.
Correct. Coming in through ACES open choice.
Okay. And do we have them coming in through other mechanisms as well?
Yes. So interdistrict magnet schools come in through the New Haven Public Schools lottery. So suburban students who'd like to attend, this is a regional program.
I understand. Thank you for that reminder. And Ms. Hannons, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, just one question. Michelle, is this number lower than usual?
It is. So the enrollment year over year is lower. Some of that attributes to the fact that we opened less seats and offered less seats. So in schools that were oversubscribed with students from New Haven who would want to attend the school, we did not offer seats in the grade levels that were oversubscribed. So in a school like Barack Obama, we actually reduced the amount of seats. There was a reduction in seats at some other schools like East Rock, Conti West in the earlier grades. So we looked at the year over year enrollment data to determine where we would open seats and what grade levels.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much. Hearing nothing else in this item, we'll move on to a resolution. And this is related to entering into agreements, into contracts with the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. Ms. Strand and Ms. DeMayo.
Hi, Ms. Strand is not able to be here today, so I'll just present. HSC received a grant to expand their outdoor gardens, and the state requires that we have resolutions for authorized signatures go through at the same time that a contract is being prepared by them. So that's all that this is. It will go to the board this way and be approved. And it reflects our own board's signature resolution for authorized people.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions from the committee? I had one question. So the language that's here, you said it reflects our process. Is this the required language from the state, or was this written by the district to meet those requirements, or written by?
This language was provided by the state, and it's just that the people signing and the secretarial part is from our own resolution.
Okay, so the one thing that I see, I have no issues with this and I plan to support it. It's just that as it's written currently, it's quite open-ended. And I mean, so typically, the board approves things as a group, and then as that, we empower the president of the board to sign off on anything based on the board action. This, as it's reading, is saying that the president is authorized to enter into and sign said contracts on the behalf of the board. And I would assume some contracts are going to be no cost, but some contracts, I don't know. I mean, a contract could encumber funds. And so would it be a problem if this was limited in nature, or something that reflects that the president can do that when based on board action?
Yeah, I can look into that and see if we can add that language into it. I don't see why not, actually. I just was following their guidance. So.
Yeah, I mean, the language, and I'm obviously not an attorney. I think the language could be something along the lines that the president is duly authorized to enter into and sign said contracts on the behalf of the Board of Education when approved, when said contracts are approved by the board through its regular process or whatever. So I guess that's my question. Is that a problem? Does that create a problem? Because I see it closing off the open-ended problem. As it is, this is open-ended. They could enter into any contract that the Department of Agriculture would wish to enter into with us for any amount of money for forever. So just having some limits.
I will consult with their staff person tomorrow, and then if there's no issue with it, then we can add the language. If there is, I'll consult with Attorney Alexiadis on how we would go forward with that.
Okay. So so later when we make the motion to move the items to the board, it would be under the understanding that this would be moved with something that would limit it in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
And of course, if there's an issue, please let the committee know this week, and we can always do something different if we need to.
Okay.
But I also fully understand that the state does what the state wishes in some of these things, and we've had to jump through hoops before, and they might say, no, if it doesn't have this exact wording, then you shall not receive funds, in which case we'll need to have that information.
Okay.
All right, any other comments or questions related to this? Your hand's up, Ms. Hannons. Is that connected to this?
No.
All right, we'll move on into the agreements. The first one of which is an agreement with, looks like Kaylee Schwartz Psychological Services. Ms. Jackson.
So just first, there's a couple of corrections that need to be made. The agreement will be March 26th until June 14th. And the total cost will be $45,936. So we will update that, but I just want to make sure that you're aware that there's a change from the original time of when this was submitted and the contractor's availability. So ultimately, go ahead.
Tiffany, can you repeat the date and the
Yep.
amount?
Yep, March, and I'll send that as an update, March 26th through June 14th. And the total amount, $45,936.
Thank you.
Yep. Um, this is a special circumstance for a kiddo who has some very complex needs. Again, having to coordinate some additional behavioral services with a contractor. This contractor, if you notice, is all the way in Ridgefield. I am sharing that information because there were many other contractors that provided the service that we were trying to also get outside of this particular vendor. But again, there's some things in law where it has to be mutually agreeable with the parents. So ultimately, these are contracted services for a kiddo with some complex needs as agreed upon with attorneys.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions related to this? Okay, I had none either. So thank you very much, and we'll note the corrections when we move this item. And we'll move on to the next item, which is number 2 is an amendment with the agreement with Learn Regional Service Center. Ms. Denegre?
Hi, everybody. I'm with Keisha, so I'm hoping you can hear me. Yes, what we are doing is we're amending the funding sources. A part of the contract will now be paid with SIG carryover, and the other portion of the contract will be paid with current year SIG. We did that purposely just to continue to spend down the SIG grants, as well as be able to leverage the current SIG and put it into other items that the staff has requested.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions? The one thing that I would have is a request, Ms. DeMayo, that the description of this, so it sounds like what I'm hearing is that this is a no change in the cost amount. It's just changing in the funding sources that pay the cost that the board has already previously approved.
Correct. That is correct.
So Ms. DeMayo, if we could just add the language that we typically use to denote that, to make it very clear that this is not an amendment adding $122,000, but that this is just changing the funding sources with no change in the cost.
Sure.
All right, thank you very much. Hearing nothing else on this item, we'll go ahead and move on to, we have, it looks like agreements 3 through 6 are another group of the COLA increases for the school readiness. So Ms. Diaz-Valencia, we could talk about these as a group, but of course, if the committee has questions about individual ones, we're happy to talk about them individually.
Yeah, so all 3 are for the cost of living agreements for Auntie Rose, the Little Schoolhouse, Creative Me, and the YMCA. We were just waiting for signatures to come back, but this is part of that same batch from last time. The only thing I would say here is that it seems as though the descriptors are still the same, talking about spaces when indeed the COLA agreements aren't about spaces. When I went in and looked at the agreements today for another review, they are correct. And they don't have that language in there, so it should be all set.
Okay, so you're suggesting then that the description is changed moving forward. Is that the same? Is this the same description as was used last time?
Correct. Correct. And I think we discussed this last time at the FNO.
Okay, Ms. DeMayo?
Yes. The issue becomes that when you're not talking about the spaces that the provider is offering, then it's just an amount to a COLA increase to what? And that's why we put them in there. Otherwise, we don't have a reference point to know what that COLA is covering with a provider. So I'm happy to remove it, but we probably should talk offline at some point about a best way of wording those, because it causes questions and then we end up having to answer them this way. If that's okay with you.
So the COLA increase is based on the number of students, or is it based on the staff?
So I guess maybe where the language is in the increase. There's no increase. These are COLA agreements based on what is allocated from the state, which indeed, yes, is often aligned to the enrollment that was approved. But there's no increase. It's a COLA agreement. It's an agreement around the COLA funds.
Okay.
Okay,
It's just a different way than we've done it in the past, and that's why there's some confusion there.
all
We're
right,
good.
okay. Maybe the solution is to say to provide COLA funds
Mhm.
for the
Mhm.
46 school readiness spaces, using number 3 as an example.
Yes,
Yes.
that sounds right.
Yep.
Okay. So the suggestion here then, Ms. DeMayo, is that the word COLA increase is changed to COLA funds
Right.
for their 46 school readiness spaces or something like that. Okay. Well, thank you. It's good to be precise. Are there comments or questions related to these 4 items, items 3 through 6? And I've already asked whatever questions I've had. So, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to, item number 7 is an amendment to the agreement. This is a no change in funding with their agreement with Winston Strategic Partners LLC. So, Mr. Middleton?
I'm actually going to take this one for Mr. Middleton this evening. So similar to the prior agreement, this is just an amendment to change the account number. So it was an error typo. The wrong account number, the wrong office account number was used for this. And so in order to pay the contractor for where the funds are allocated, we need to come before the board this evening to change that account number.
All right. Seems straightforward. Are there any comments or questions? All right, thank you both. We'll move on to number 8, which is an agreement with Major Shippey as an instructor of JROTC. So is Dr. Billy or somebody here to address this? He's brand new. He might not have known to be here.
Yeah. Hi, I think he's just having some issues logging in. I just got a text message from him. This is part 2 of an already approved contract for payment for our instructor for ROTC at Hill House.
Okay, do you, are there comments or questions from the committee? My question is, this is listed as a February 1 start date, and I just wanted to confirm that that was the accurate start date. This person has already started doing work?
Correct. We've already paid for the first component of the contract, so now this is moving towards the second half for the remainder of the year.
Okay, is this a new, this isn't a new person, this is the.
No, same person.
So we previously approved this up to February or January 30th, and so this is for the next piece, or?
It's the next component of the payment, correct?
Okay,
Yeah, he was hired right before Christmas break, and the contract splits in 2, so it's a continuation of the work, but it's the second part of the payment. So we've already paid him the first portion. This is the second half.
okay. All right. So I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm gonna review that just because I'm trying to get it clear in my head. I'm happy to move this forward for now, but I might have some questions tomorrow once I have a chance to review this. I will also note that, I mean, the JRTC programs have been happening at Hill House. We've funded those probably for decades. And then the reminder that the Board of Ed portion is roughly half of the pay that the Department of Defense or Department of the Army, one of the departments pays the other portion.
It's
So,
DOD.
okay. Department of Defense, yeah, all right. All right. Any other comments or questions? Dr. Yarborough?
And so I think you're mentioning you're going to review that this is not like a double payment, that the first one had limits on it that actually reflects half.
That's what I'm going to be taking a look,
Okay.
just because I want to make it clear. I imagine I might have questions and I want to make sure that I'm accurate about it.
Thank you.
So I'm just letting people know that I will review that and then if I have questions, I'll pass that on, and if there's issues, we can make adjustments at the meeting. Attorney Alexiadis?
Yeah, hi. I have a couple of questions about it that I'll address offline, but who should I direct those to besides you, Chairman Wilcox?
Go ahead and direct them to me, and I would assume Assistant Superintendent Denegre and Ms. DeMeo, just to keep
Okay,
the loop, and the rest of the committee too, please.
okay.
And Attorney Alexiadis, if you could put Dr. Antoine Billy, who's the principal of Hill House, on the as well.
Okay, it really just has to do with contract formalities, but yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to the number 9, an agreement with Crown Castle International Corp. Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is an item that Gilda and I have been working on for quite some time. This is a refresh or upgrade to the wide area network for the district. That's going to increase stability and give us greater bandwidth. Should cause a lot of our connectivity issues between the school district and our server, main server room. It will also allow us to provide greater security, which is part of the security upgrades that we have been doing across the district. This will be a true multi-year contract, which will require us to take it to Board of Alders, also done under E-rate. The E-rate discount for this over the length of the contract would be $272,250. This is all under the capital projects, which has been previously approved.
Okay, comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough?
Thank you, and thank you for presenting this, Mr. Lamb. This particular agreement is for internet service, and one we approved previously
not
was
internet
for phone.
service.
What'd you say?
It's the connectivity between the schools and our central server. So it's the wide area network for the district, which collectively brings all the schools together under one network.
Okay, and the something that we approved previously was for telephone?
Capital dollars have been approved through the capital plan under this upgrade already. That was done through the Board of Aldermen.
Right, but I'm saying there's a, maybe it's not a similar item, but there's a similar large budgeted item that came before this committee maybe a month ago. And I'm asking, is that upgrade? I thought that was also upgrade to the network, but maybe that's for the telephone service.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, this is okay.
So one is for internet, one is for network. This is for network. The other one was for internet. So it's a little different.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Attorney Alexiadis, did you have your hand up for this item? Okay. So 2 questions. One is just the reminder, the E-rate discount, that's through the federal government, and that pays 90% of these costs, and we pay 10%. Is that? So as it's listed here, the E-rate discount rate is $54,450. That's what it'll actually cost the district.
Correct.
We're not getting
This may be, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. But this may be incorrect.
So
I would need to speak with Selena on that.
So previously with E-rate, if I remember correctly, it was the federal government will reimburse 90% of the cost.
She may have these flip-flopped. I just want to make sure that that's correct before I confirm.
Yeah, I just want to check. From my recollection, after having done this for several years now, that it's a 90-10 split. We pay the 10. Federal government pays the 90 through the E-rate, and so the smaller number reflects the true costs that we'll end up having to pay. And if that's the case, it's a little unclear just in the wording, because it just says E-rate discount rate is $54,450. 450, which makes it sound like we're paying the 544,000, but then we're going to get a discount, or so I just want us to have, again, some precision in our language.
I can provide clarity to that.
And so, and the second thing is, for the first year, this is set to be March 11th, 2024 to June 30, but the amounts are the same for this and the subsequent years. And so my question is the first year going to be prorated, or what's because we're already,
This was something that Gilda had negotiated out, so I don't know the terms of it. Without having her here to be able to speak to that, I would need to contact Crown Castle and verify what was discussed.
okay. So, yeah, we're going to need to get a confirmation on that. I'm happy to move this forward. We do things like this periodically, so nothing is surprising to me on this. I just want to make sure that that we're accurate with those numbers and what the explanation would be of why the first year would not be prorated, since this is not equipment necessarily. This is, as I look through the backup documentation, this is a lot of it is bandwidth and access to fiber network, et cetera, which seems like that would be flexible costs based on service months, as opposed to it looks like there's service on top of equipment. And I could imagine that equipment, you buy the equipment in the fiscal year, the equipment costs what it costs. But this looks like it's also bandwidth through the fiber networks buried under our streets. So, Attorney Alexiadis?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, while we are getting clarity on this, I would also think we should look at whether we're talking about reimbursement, and I'm not sure that it's actual reimbursement, maybe a direct pay, so we're only out of pocket. I frankly don't recall how we structured it in prior years. We should confirm it. Just remember
It's a little hard to hear you, at least for me, Attorney Alexiadis.
Yeah, you're breaking up too. What I was going to say was that, what I said was that we should also get clarity on whether this is actually a true reimbursement or whether we're only out of pocket on the smaller.
It's true reimbursement. That I know for sure.
Okay. So, okay. So I think we'll move this on to the board with the understanding that we're going to be getting this information this week, and if we don't, if we're unable to, I understand you're working shorthanded there, Mr. Lamb, in this department. Pull the item back.
I just received Crown Castle's contact information this week for the person that I need to discuss this with. So I'll reach out to them and gain clarity on this and provide an update to this table, as well as a memo just to back up what we've discussed tonight.
Okay. So if I remember correctly, there's just the question about the discount, the 90-10 split on that, and then the this first year, since we're already in March, what's the is this prorated? Should this be prorated amount? And if not, why not? Those are at least the two questions that I've been hearing. And then Attorney Alexiadis, your suggestion was clarifying which issue again? It was the
reimbursement versus
right.
if we need to put up for, is it a discount or is it a reimbursement?
Yeah.
My understanding is that all E-rate is a reimbursement.
That's my recollection as well, but it's good to clarify. Okay. All right, so we got a path forward on this item. Hearing nothing else on this one, we'll go ahead and move on to, there's one contract, an awarded contract with Auto Parts and Services Incorporated. Mr. Lane?
Good evening, everyone. This is a award of on-call vehicle maintenance services contract for the NHBS operations vehicle fleet to Auto Parts and Services LLC for the amount of $20,000. This was procured through sealed bid number 21922, and it's for an effective date of 3/18, which is today's date, till the end of the fiscal year, 6/30, and again for the amount of $20,000. I do need to note there is one correction on page 2 for key question number 1. The description was inadvertently left in for the previous item that was put on as a template. I have updated this document and sent it to Pat DeMayo for record for correction. I sent that about an hour ago. Just want to make a note here that that description does not match this and was mistakenly left in there by accident, but I made the correction. All right. Any other questions?
All right. And so this Auto Parts and Services is just exactly what it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Pat does have a question.
Yes, Mr. Aileen, you need to send that to Selena Manning.
I did copy her on it, so she has it as well, Pat.
Okay.
Okay. So it's the low bid, and as a reminder, these are all available bid documents, et cetera. That's all on the city purchasing bonfire site, both for current bids and previous bids.
Correct. And just to make sure this is clear for everyone as to how this was done, we initially had 2 vendors that were performing service for us, and the budget was split between 2. That second part was still left open as to what we were going to do with it, so we put it back out to bid for that second part because we could no longer use that vendor for the city of New Haven, and that's what the remainder of these dollars came from. And I think Dr. Yarborough has another question.
Okay, Dr. Yarborough?
Thank you. Yes. What is the size of our fleet, please?
Oh, if you give me 1 minute, Dr. Yarborough, I can look that up.
We're somewhere around 20, 25 vehicles.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Without getting too in depth as to what the split is, that's about the number.
Okay.
We have some.
Yep,
we
I
have
just want to
some box
ballpark.
trucks. We have some box trucks. We have some service vehicles for our tradesmen. We have vehicles for our kitchen that include a couple of regular cars and a regular for the supervisors, and box trucks that include refrigeration for the kitchen side. And then security team, they have a number of vehicles as well.
Great. Thank you.
And
So the vehicle fleet, I was able to just pull it up. It's actually a bit larger than that, Tom. So what I have here for a number of vehicles for the facilities department, that does not include the food services department. This is for facilities, security, snow, and a couple extras that are here. It's roughly around 42 vehicles, which currently you have about 9 of them that are down that we talked to the city about for replacement so far.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
all right. Okay, hearing nothing else on this, I think this was the end of the action items. So I move that we send to the board with a recommendation to approve with the noted corrections and the caveats that we have some outstanding questions. But these 2 abstracts, 1 resolution, the 9 agreements, and 1 contract with a recommendation to approve. It's been I couldn't hear you there, Dr. Yarborough. You mouthed seconded. So is there any discussion? All right, we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Yarborough. He's nodding and saying yes, but I can't hear you, Dr. Okay, he's indicated in a variety of ways that he's in the affirmative, and I'm a yes as well. So we'll, since this meeting is recorded, people can review the recording. if a verbal is required, we at least have it many indications, including 2 thumbs up and a yes in the chat. So. Okay, so we will move on to our discussion items. The first, which is the February financial. Ms. Hannons?
Yes, Dr. White. Did you get my email? Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to be presenting today is the monthly financial report for the period ending February 29th of this fiscal year. Next. Okay, and of course, you always see this in front of all of our presentations, which is our strategic plan for fiscal year 2020 through 2024. Next. What's included in this report are just two reports. So you're going to have your general fund report as of February 29th, and then you're going to have your monthly special funds finance report as of the same date, February 29th. To date, we've spent a total of $176 million, with general fund is up to 114.7 of the adopted budget. And then the special funds, we have 62.2 of the current budget. Next. Okay, so we're going to go into the general fund report first. So here you're showing that these are the monthly expenditures, which equal the 114,690. And if you look over to my right, you'll see that the projected deficit has gone down a little. So now we're at $4 million and still going down every day as we pull things from the system or make adjustments as necessary. Next. And here is just how to read the general funds report. I think we've all seen it enough. We probably see in our sleep now, but this is how you read the actual numbers. Next. And then the general fund, this is the actual breakdown of, of what we're actually spending and the percentage that we've used in each area. So where you may see zeros in there, it's just showing that we may have a surplus or we may have applied revenue to those lines. And you can keep going all of Dr. White. 1, 2, you can keep going. Okay, and then the next slide. So the only changes that we've made to the budget, of course, are the ones that we're still monitoring our staffing and our vacancies. We're still actively monitoring overtime for the custodian and security due to staff shortages. We're working on trying to fill some of those vacancies so that a lot of the overtime can go away. The revenue for interdistrict, I think I reported previously, did not equal what we thought we were going to get. And also, so they didn't get a cost of living, but folks did get raises. So they increased our costs. And then also I think it was 75 students at the time that we had open seats for. So that also affects our expected revenue. With the non-personnel, we're still working on, a lot of the schools are using their ESSER money to cover their instructional supplies and technology, and we're also using their ESSER funds to cover their field trips. We're still monitoring our reimbursement for our tuition and our transportation numbers, and we're still monitoring the changes in the utility costs. I think right now we're on the positive side, but I heard we might get another little snow shower or something, but I don't think we're expecting any big increases at this time. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Next slide. And this basically tells you about our mitigation efforts. We're still doing the same thing that we have done in the past, where we're monitoring, looking at everything that comes into the office, as we should be. And we're just basically now monitoring our revenue to see what has changed and where we are now. We're continuing to use our ESSER funds to cover costs that were allowable under the grant, being sure that, you know, at the end of the day, that those costs will be accepted as valid ESSER costs. We're also doing our custodial and security overtime again. And just to mention, with our security and overtime, a lot of these funds that we have gotten into the district over the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, what's happening is that a lot of our custodial and security overtime costs are due to these additional programs, which of course they wouldn't have been budgeted in the general fund from the first place anyway, because these were programs that were funding from outside sources. So, you know, even for next year, we'll have to be looking at, okay, fine, if we keep having the schools open at night and running after school programs, how do we fund the fixed costs that also go with running those programs? And then with Saturday Academy, that was one of the things that I had done previously, and I pushed for it again this time, is to Saturday program, we wouldn't have any additional costs if we didn't have the Saturday Academy program, which then allowed me to say within the grant, you need to budget for these additional costs. So we can, a lot of times they'll say, well, if you're running the school district, you should have these costs covered. But because this was a grant that would only be open on Saturday, we were allowed to put those additional costs into our the Saturday Academy budget. Next slide. Okay, and we continue to take a look at all expenses, which I explained earlier, and to see where we can make further cuts that do not affect the students, as well as exploring other sources of non-restricted revenue. And as remaining ARP funds will be sunset in September of 2024, we need to look at programs and resources to make the hard decisions this fiscal year so that we will continue the work identified. And so we're looking at all of these different areas, building uses, overtime costs, enrollment, class size, part-time staff, and increasing enrollment in inter-district so that we don't have a loss in revenue. We're also looking at summer school costs and how we can use the, you know, to kind of mitigate those costs as well. And then of course we, okay, so you can go to the next slide. Okay, unknowns, which may add additional costs, again, would be our utility, our unemployment costs, which we don't know what they are until basically, sometimes we get the bills quarterly, but those bills come from the city. So then we look at them to see if there's folks up there that shouldn't be up there, and make the adjustments. Most folks, though, believe it or not, if you have the part-time costs, they will bill back for those hours that the people are no longer working in the district. We're also looking at snow removal, litigation, emergencies, and reduction. I mentioned a while back, I think the reduction in the indirect cost rate went down to 5.2, and I am really expecting that rate to go down further. And that's because of all of the grants that we have received over the course of the years. Now what's happening is that we have to keep in mind that those costs cannot be claimed as part of our general fund expenditures. So, and then my little footnote at the bottom, keep in mind the current reports are based on year-to-date expenditures, and a lot of them represent a snapshot in time as to where we are at this particular moment. Next. Okay, the financial report for special funds, as you can see, we're up to 141. Total available funds for this year are 141,160,798. So those funds, if you look at 22-23, you're starting to see the decrease in the grants from where we were in 22-23 to where we are in 23-24. I think in the budget projection report, I estimated, and believe me, it's just an estimate at this point, because a lot of factors would enter into that. We're expecting for next fiscal year 97, I think, around about $97 million. Next slide, if there's another. Okay, and this is a visual. I know some of us like to see visual. And so this is the grant funded expenditures by category. And as you can see, the blue is basically where a large percentage of our funds are used for staff, full-time salaries, staff that are on particular grants. Another large category would, of course, be, it's supposed to be, I think, fringe benefits. Where it might say travel and mileage, other purchase services, but another large cost is, no, our fixed cost is over there at 4.8. So I'm looking at transportation and, oh, because transportation is in there, so that would account for the large number. But just to take a look at these numbers, a lot of this stuff will be going away for next fiscal year. So we, I want to keep that in the forefront so that we can, keep it out there. And the next slide. Okay, it just tells you how to read the previous reports for the grants. We can move, okay. And then here you can see where we have the $140 million that we're working with right now. And of that 140, we spent 62. We have encumbrances of 21. So we've actually spent about 44.2% thus far. And we have available $57 million roughly. Okay, and this is expenditures by category, and this is just another visual where it shows you where the funds are being spent. And then that should be it. So if there are any questions, I'll entertain those now. Thank you, Dr. White.
All right. Lou, are there comments or questions from the committee? The one, I'll just note that I went back and looked at the February report for last year. And at this time last year that you were projecting a $4.5 million deficit, and this one is less than that. And last year, the district was able to come in it budget for the general funds. So we've been in situations with more than $4 million before, which you've been able to do mitigate with all the various ways that you're doing it. I guess I'm asking like a gut question. Are you feeling good about the rest of this year? So that it might be similar to previous years, or is this year still?
Let me put it this way. We're on camera. We're getting close. We're getting close because like right now what we're doing, we're canceling a lot. And because we haven't had winter storms or any emergencies in that area, I'm just going to say that we're continuing to go in the right direction.
Okay. Well, understanding that there are no promises in any of those statements, I'll just note trend in previous years was similar. That led to a good end. So let's hope that similar factors are in play now.
Well, what I tried to do, believe it or not, was to make sure that we knew last year that we were going to start ending up being in this situation. So instead of have just massive cuts in the programs, my thought was to start winding down now. So I actually started winding down last year, knowing that we were going to have issues. But so we have plans in place to and we're, how they say, we're looking at no stone unturned, but we have been like saying no to things that, or like right now too, we've stopped all ordering for the schools because it's March already. So as we all know, by the time you get the orders in, process, move, the supplies would come in June. So what we've done is like the March 17th, which was last Friday, we did a cutoff on everything that we have out there. And we're not accepting any additional purchase orders with the exception of field trips. Everything else, it's like on hold or just stopped at this point.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for the report. And we'll go on and move on to the next item, which is listed as YFC timetable for the RFQ process. Ms. DeMayo, do you have other people you need to be brought in?
Yes, Mr. Tabaris is going to be presented for the department.
Thank you.
And Gemma.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hello.
All right, Ms. Joseph, you could take it away and bring in any of your staff as needed.
Christian Tabatis should also be brought in, please, if he's, I
He
can't see.
will pop up in a second.
He will pop up in a second. Okay, I feel like I'm on Star Trek when we get, I forgot the word when. What's that word?
Beamed in, beamed out.
Beamed in, there you go.
Good afternoon. Good evening, sorry.
Hello.
Okay, so we were told that we were asked to do just a brief, what we're calling a talk about our RFQ process. And if we'll go to slide 1 or 2, as you know, we always discuss the reasons that we are very hardcore about implementing this process. We believe that it really brings strategic alignment in aligning our strategic plan, our strategic needs with the services provided by our vendors. It provides an opportunity for us to vet our vendors to ensure that our requirements matches that of the services the vendors have available to us, ensuring that we are meeting our compliance and risk management standards, making sure there's a transparent process which we can publicly speak to around how we achieved or how we agreed on a particular vendor. And certainly it provides us the opportunity to do better decision-making with in understanding in detail vendor information. Next slide.
So yes, here we'll just be discussing the bonfire platform, which is what we're going to be shifting to. So it's currently being used by the City of New Haven's purchasing department. And this is a way that we're going to streamline our electronic solicitation process. So the good thing about this platform is that it's open to the community. So every community partner that wants to apply will create a login to complete the application, and all the documents will be available on this one platform for download. And let's say an organization said, oh, we never even received those documents. All those documents will be there. And if they downloaded that document, it's going to timestamp it to say this organization downloaded this document, let's say a W-9 or an insurance document on March 15th at 3:45 in the afternoon. So we can track when these organizations are logging in and actually downloaded the needed documents to complete the RFQ in a timely fashion. And the bonfire application, we're going to be using this only for the summer 2024 RFQ process. We decided to split the RFQs where we're going to be focusing on those organizations for summer first, giving them priority so we can get them started on July 1st. And then we're going to be transferring the RFQ process and reopening it in the new fiscal year for after school and all school year programming opportunities, just so we are focused more on the scoring and the documents that each organization presents for the summer. At the end, this is emerging as a best practice as we identified youth servicing community partners for the 24-25 school year.
And what we mean by that is that we are going to require that all of our schools working with community partners go through the vetting process required through the request for qualifications.
And yes, and to continue along, the way we're going to be communicating with our community partners, so we'll be hosting a public meeting, which we usually do via Zoom, so it's accessible to all our community organizations. We'll gather a list of all the agencies we've reached out to in the last couple of years. We're going to be dating it back to the last 5 years, who we've contracted with within the Youth Family Community Engagement Department, and then other agencies to just assure we're capturing all the organizations that have worked with the district. Another resource we're going to be using is the United Way to send information via their listserv. We are part of the Greater New Haven After School Network, so they have a wide array of community partners they can reach out to as well. So we want to expand our efforts and try to recruit more partners into the district. Another way we'll be doing this is adding this information into the New Haven Public Schools website. We currently do have the 23-24 RFQ link there. We'll be removing that and adding all the information regarding the 24-25 RFQ in our YFCE department page. And then the last thing, information can be posted on the bonfire platform. This is deadlines, any questions or any notes that we need to make regarding the RFQ process will be added into the platform and will be notified. They'll be notifying every organization that has a login completed through the bonfire. And the last thing I didn't include, we do have a special email, is the RFQ, YFCE RFQ at new-haven.ct.gov, that long email. So any questions, particularly pertaining to the RFQ, can be shared to that email, and we'll be responding to all questions. And that's just a quick snapshot of what we have going on.
All right, and before I open it up for questions, I'll just have the reminder that we have had, I think, this January and a year ago, January, and the first January meeting, a complete overview of the RFQ process, the qualifications that you're looking for, how it works, types of organizations you're working with, and those meetings are recorded. It's the first January meeting. So that's the full overview of the process and not just this new piece, the bonfire. So comments or questions related to this? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, thank you for coming to present. And I support what you're doing in terms of using the bonfire and bringing the different partners who are currently working with our youth and family team into that system. I appreciate kind of your strategy around prioritizing those partners who want to submit information for this summer, and then bringing on the additional partners who are going to submit for the upcoming school year. As you walk through the objectives of the program, I could just visualize all that taking place, and it being clear, it being streamlined, even down to the kind of shared email address that all the potential partners can use in communicating. And yeah, so I just appreciate kind of what you laid out and what you're going to implement. And it sounds like it'll serve us well, and also serve our current partners and potential partners. So thank you very much for this walkthrough and for implementing all that you've said.
Thank you, Dr. Yarbrough.
I'll just add that I think that this is a great addition to the good work you all are already doing. I think it does all the ideas that it's going to be more streamlined and very auditable, etc. And for both sides, so that also you can kind of see. I know from when we get other things. So the most recent was the transportation contract. You know, you're able to see not only who you send information to, but who actually looked at the bid documents and so on. And so I think that that's great. And so I think this makes a good process even better. And I have no comments or suggestions. It sounds like you're being very thorough in how you're putting the word out. And I would also think that there's going to be some reinforcement of that message, because this is also the site where people are going to pick up facilities related contracts as well. And I can imagine going in, if I am a landscaper or something and want to bid on snow removal, I might see, oh, look, there's something else here. And I know so-and-so over at this organization might be interested in that. So in addition to everything you've said, I can just imagine, just as more work goes through the city system, that's going to reinforce that. Well, thank you very much for the overview of these changes, and thank you. All right. Seeing nothing else on this one, we'll go ahead and move on. The next discussion item is called the school restroom report. This is a report I requested. It was originally based on comments I've heard over the years of some of the challenges with school restrooms and with issues related to that in terms of vandalism, cleanliness. This was a priority of our two student board members when they presented a report. Restrooms was high on their list. And I think I saw just before this meeting, there's an independent article about a student government meeting from Friday where they were also highlighting this as a priority. So, Mr. Lamb.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I've been working with our facilities team over the last several weeks to draft this report. The Lisa Hopkins as our Assistant Director for Custodial Operations, Jeff Stanzowitz as our Assistant Director for Maintenance, and Jamar have been instrumental in putting this together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamar to be able to share his screen and present the report, and I will come in with additional comments and questions.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. All right. If you can just confirm that you can see my first slide.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. So as Tom said, the Assistant Director of Maintenance, Jeff Stanzowitz, and the Assistant Director of Custodial Services, Lisa Hopkins, were instrumental in creating this, especially when it comes to the menstrual equity law. Lisa has put in a lot of effort and time into championing this for the facilities department and is spearheading our efforts to determine what contractors we're going to consider in this process and how we're going to lay this process out. But I'll get into that as the third item. So this is the restroom conditions and equity projects. Equity projects are going to be the single-sex restrooms and menstrual equity law portions of it. And with it, I'll move right into the first slide, which is going to be vandalism. The facilities department has responded to quite a bit of vandalism in the district when it comes to restrooms. Unfortunately, with the current CMMS system that we have here, our central maintenance management system, we do not have the ability right now to properly identify vandalism based on the categories that we use. The way the system is set up, vandalism is set under a budget category, and not all building managers are trained on how to utilize that piece of it. And so what we have here is what we were able to identify through the current CMMS system, but we believe that it's significantly higher than what it is, even though these numbers are pretty significant in themselves as they're represented. So this is the numbers that we were able to pull from July 1st to March 12th, 2024. 248 work orders were specifically identified as vandalism as associated to bathrooms or restrooms. And as I said, the estimated number we believe to be significantly higher than that. What we're able to do through this is do a data trend. The highest category, not surprising, is going to be high schools. 28% of the 248 work orders were high schools. The top 3 schools overall were Wilbur Cross, Morrow Sheridan, and Ross Woodard. Not to necessarily cause them any specific pains through this presentation, but just to give you some representation as to where they're mostly happening. And then the high school with the highest cost of repairs is Metropolitan Business Academy, and that was due to some vandalism that is so associated, I believe, with an explosion and possibly fire inside of a bathroom that caused quite a bit of damage.
Just to tack on to the work order portion of this, with the implementation of the FMX work order system, we will be able to pull this data out much more easily. That will allow us to give much more detail in our reporting metrics. This and several other categories will be able to be more clearly defined.
That's correct. Thank you, Tom. Just to show some of the pictures of vandalism and how we categorize them. First one's going to be graffiti, right? It costs us time and materials for paint and services, either by an outside painter or utilizing our own painter. We have physical damage. This is actually in 2 bathrooms in 1 school, where the walls, where there used to be a dispenser inside those walls, were ripped out, and the walls were damaged beside them as well. This right here, you can see a small tile, and to recreate that wall is going to be very, very expensive. And now we have to probably put in a brand new wall on that side in both bathrooms in order to fix this. This is some of the plumbing damage that happens. We have 1 toilet that was actually ripped up by students and moved. And then we have a sink drain that was damaged by students in this particular school. And we have the ceilings, which get damaged. These are some of the grids where they were pulled down and ripped by students inside the bathrooms. And one thing that we don't have a picture of at the moment is the damage to a lot of these stalls. Currently over at Hill House, just to give you an example, we have both gang bathrooms for boys and girls on the 2nd floor that are currently closed or can only partially be used because stall doors have been ripped off or the stalls have been totally destroyed themselves. And we currently have 2 vendors out right now providing proposals in order to repair those. All right, any questions on vandalism before we move into single-sex restrooms? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, thank you for presenting the information and providing the pictures as well. What is our understanding of the time of day the vandalism occurs, and when is it typically reported?
So as we've been finding, this has been happening during the daytime, not necessarily during the evening with outside programs. That's the information that we have so far. When it's reported is usually by the building manager, either that day or the following day when it's found by the building manager, or maybe by someone that's utilizing the bathroom and then reports it. Sometimes you'll have students that are part of the student body, right, the governance that will go ahead and report it because they're concerned about what's happening inside their bathrooms. And sometimes there'll be the people to also, or the moving body to also expedite, or should I say, prioritize some of these repairs inside their schools, like at Hill House right now.
Thank you. And I know it's a different department than yours, but are the people who do the work tear things apart, are they communicated with? Is it known who they are? Is there follow-up with them? Are these repeat occurrences?
Dr. Yarbrough, depending upon the severity of the incident, the security teams informed, and the school administration would be informed, and it would go from there.
And I'm imagining ripping up a toilet takes a little bit of time, but I could be wrong.
The toilet's there with items that are screwed to hold it down. The toilet's not there to really be meant rocked back and forth. It's not meant to withstand a lot of force, right? The amount of force on a toilet that's sitting on the floor is really downward, right? So if all it would take was for someone to kick that toilet hard enough a few times, and it would come off of its seating, exposing the wax ring and the drain below.
Understood. That helps. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, moving on to single-sex restrooms. This is really not a new use of or new policy that is associated with providing equity across bathrooms, but it's now applying recently to gender diverse students. So you can see as my first bullet there, this really has to do with the civil rights protections and supports for transgender. They're utilizing the Title IX of Education Amendments of 1972 in order to apply this particular amendment and civil right to gender diverse students. Basically, everyone has the right to use the restroom that's associated with the sex they identify with, right? To put it into simple terms. All right, so how we're approaching this right now when it comes to gender diverse students that are now required to have access to single-sex restrooms. NHBS, as a facilities department, is working along with school administration and trying to determine how to do this effectively and efficiently throughout the district. These are some of the approaches that we're going to be taking. Number one is to identify and label to identify 1 or 2 single person bathrooms as unisex or gender neutral for gender diverse students to be able to utilize. Question, of course, is going to be where are we going to do that? Currently, they can use the restrooms that are inside of the nursing office, but it has to be expand beyond that based on the requirements. And so restroom identification is going to be selected with the school administration in conjunction with them. And the recommendation right now is to possibly use restrooms that are located close to the administration office so that we can control access to those restrooms. So this is something we're going to be rolling out within the next few months as we talk with each individual school administration office and determine what bathrooms they want to identify and how we're going to select them.
And in many cases, these rooms have already been identified. What I'm looking to work through the facilities team with is proper signage, have proper identifying language put in place so that those that need to use these restrooms understand that this is where they can go. And then long-term, looking at what we can do construction-wise to either add more restrooms or what the costs associated with that would be. Go ahead,
Dr.
John.
Thank you. Can any student request to use a single or two-person restroom?
That would be the determination. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Wilcox.
I'll just say, according to our transgender non-conforming student or youth policy, it does state that any student who has a need or desire for increased privacy, regardless of the underlying reason, should be provided access. So the board has previously endorsed that students.
And
should
that is
have
currently
access.
what happens in our schools as currently students use the one restroom they choose to.
Thank you.
I'll just add on this subject to Mr. Lamb's comments about the district making plans to move this forward. One of the comments I've received from people is that there's not enough of these, particularly in larger schools where someone might have to go, 2 flights or 1 flight down. So that's an issue there. I think it would be good.
I think
Someone's not muted, sounds like. I think it would be good that when that list is compiled, that it's shared so that stakeholders know what the desire is, understanding we might not be able to fund plans to begin with, but at least people would understand what the goal is that the district's seeking funding for construction of new restrooms, etc.
So at minimum, that's going to require us to engage with an architect or an engineer.
Okay.
And not to complicate this any more, Mr. Wilcox, but the next subject of menstrual equity is going to impact this as well.
Yep.
All right. So if we don't have any further questions on single-sex restrooms and how our approach to it, I'll go ahead and move on to menstrual equity.
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a goal? Is there a certain percentage of, do we have an accommodation goal that's represented maybe by percentage of restrooms within a school? And I imagine each school will be different based on, let's say, the number of students within that school. Or how do we know, how are we determining progress?
So I think I can answer that, Dr. Yarbrough. When schools are built, the code has the NBIC, or the International Building Code, has a ratio for occupancy to the number of bathrooms. There is no ratio or standard for us to refer to with this change. So we kind of have to work with what we think our need is going to be, and then continue to monitor it and adjust to it as we move forward, because we'll never be able to fully predict or understand what that need is going to be from year to year. And because there's no standard for us to fall back on, it's something that I think we would just need to continuously monitor and look to improve.
Thank you. And last question that's tangentially related. Our single-use or two-person use restrooms, my assumption is that they are less frequently vandalized than the other restrooms. Is that true?
I would say that's correct, unless the restrooms are ones that are not monitored. So we do have some situations at certain schools where these bathrooms are not necessarily locked, and students are able to have access to them. In other schools, they're locked and they have to request someone to open them with a key. And so they cannot be opened unless someone opens it from the inside when they're leaving, or it's open with a key from the outside. I think where we're going to, take a look at the approach to this is that, you have restrooms that are identified specifically for staff. Then you have restrooms in some schools that are identified just as unisex. And I think there's a possibility that either staff or students utilize those bathrooms, especially if they're locked and require a key, because it doesn't matter whether staff or students, someone's going to have to open the restroom for them, and we're going to know who the last person in that restroom is. And so I think that's part of what we should be looking at: access to the bathroom, what really works. And I think to caveat on what Tom said is we need to set a standard for each school to see what's going to work in that school, and then based on demand, maybe feedback from the transgender and diverse student community, that they require more in particular schools, we can go back and we can reassess.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, let's go back a second. Okay, any further questions on single-sex restrooms? Right. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, Dr. Yarbrough. Trying to figure this out, school by school. All right. So menstrual equity is a new requirement that we're needed to provide for students throughout the district. And it has to do with a topic that we're going to get into called period poverty. So I've got a couple of slides in here. This slide here is basically a list of topics that we're going to discuss over the next few minutes. I wanted to make sure that everyone knew the references and where these guidances are coming from. So there is a State of Connecticut Public Act that references the menstrual equity program, and also there's a DPH guidance and frequently asked questions document that outlines in detail and answers most questions that you can find online. So what is period poverty? It refers to the lack of access to menstrual products, menstrual health, education, hygiene management, waste facilities, or any combination of these barriers. Period poverty impacts students of all ages in Connecticut and their families, and period poverty disproportionately impacts low-income students and students of color. In addition to the educational impact of period poverty, students may face social, emotional, and mental health impacts, particularly when menstruation leads to stigma or bullying. And how does this impact education? Well, they may not show up to school and miss class, right? And so with that, we do not want to create an environment or have an environment where students will not attend school because of any of these factors. And so there is now a requirement for us to provide an equity in that area. Any questions so far? So what are the school requirements? Currently, products are available in most of the nursing offices, but there is stigma that's attached to that, as previous stated on the previous slide there, right? So to have to walk into a nurse's office and request, items may create a stigma. They want to make sure the items and the menstrual products are available to the students when they're privately using the bathroom, discreetly and independently. So the requirements are at least one school staff member should be assigned as a coordinator who will be responsible for coordinating the implementation of the menstrual equity requirements. Connecticut Public Schools serving students in grades 3 through 12 must install coin-free dispensers or otherwise provide free access to a selection of menstrual products in all girls' restrooms, any all-gender restrooms, and one boys' restroom per school.
So just to put that in perspective, Jamar, can you tell them how many bathrooms this is?
We estimate it's about 350.
Good.
All right, the school coordinator, what will they be responsible for? And I made this slide because the custodial services person, the building manager, is going to be responsible for all the stock inside the school, right? They're your main person. Probably in conjunction with the nursing office, they're going to work together. But there needs to be someone that students can talk to, right? And so someone that's going to provide engagement and also provide education, and that should be the school coordinator, whoever is deemed that person shall be in each particular school, whether it be the actual school nurse, whether it be someone else in the administrative office, or some other person in the educational area that's going to be the champion for that particular school. That has not been decided just yet. And that may be something that's decided per school, and not overall a decision that's made for the entire district. That's to be determined. But the coordinator serves as a contact person for any restocking concerns, for developing engagement and dialogue with the student body and broader school community to ensure effective implementation and for responding to student concerns. The coordinator will also be responsible for ensuring teachers, operations managers, custodial staff, and school administrators are knowledgeable about the goals and implementation of the law, and will maintain communication with such staff to ensure continuously adequate supplies of products as requested by the law. In each restroom where there is a dispenser, there is required to be an informational flyer posting. Schools may use the DPH templates to create their own. It should be tailored to the suitable age range. They have 2 reading levels that they provide, and should specify the obligation to provide a range of products free of charge in a safe and private location. And it should also include the name and contact number for the school coordinator. Any questions so far? Okay. This is something that I pulled from the DPH guideline. This is the estimated product use per student per month to give you an idea of the totality. Every student is expected to, every student that uses menstrual products is expected to use 4 to 6 products per day. And that's 96 to 504 per month. If you have 100 students, that's 960 to 5,040 per month. 1,000 students, 96,000 to 504,000 per month, and so on and so on. What does that mean for an estimated cost? The initial startup right now, based on research that I said that Lisa has been doing, and she's been the champion this from the beginning. Kudos to her, high fives and chest bumps, because it's been a bit of a task, and she's taken it on head first. Initial startup costs are estimated around $350,000 to $400,000. That's going to include the dispensers, receptacles, and menstrual products. And then maintaining the products per FY, we're estimating around $60,000. And that's for menstrual products and liner bags, because there has to be a special receptacle they're going to be using to receive these products that'll have a special type of enzyme to break down the product instead of throwing in the regular garbage as, you know, kind of a biohazard waste, and to prevent students from, or should I say, deter them from flushing them down the toilet.
Now, this also does not include any replacement of dispensers or issues that we may have with vandalism.
Correct. Questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions here. One is on the last subject here for the menstrual equity information. I do know, so things are in place because I'm trying to think here. It's September 1st is the deadline where this has to be, where all school districts have to be compliant. And so I guess my first question is, are we on track for being compliant?
Our largest obstacle right now is funding. So we're working with Christine. Once this is laid out in a more permanent way, where we have vendors selected that we kind of want to work with and stuff like that, we'll be presenting to Christine probably either next week or the following week to identify where these dollars are going to come from.
All right, thank you, because that leads right into my second question is, along with the legislation, was extra dollars allocated to schools to meet this requirement?
I have not seen anything related to that, where those dollars would come from.
Shocking, an unfunded mandate, yet another one, even though I'm 100% in agreement that there should be a mandate. It would also be nice if they allocated some funds to help pay for it. My final question related to this is the guidelines from the state say that one does not need to use a dispenser. One could, I think the quote is something like, use a basket on the counter. I would imagine the worry would be that the the reason for having these dispensers is to make sure that things aren't just being thrown around. I mean, we already talked about vandalism in the restrooms, that things aren't being destroyed and wasted. My question is, would it be a chance to have like a little pilot program right now in the schools, like in the month of April, for instance, or May, have a school with some of the restrooms where we just try that to see how that goes? So for instance, having two boys myself, the one required in a male restroom might see more damage than for my daughter. You know, she and her friends probably would have been happy for this and not destroyed. I'm just wondering if there's a chance for a pilot to see if some of this could be rolled out earlier and to check the assumptions about the need for the dispense.
I think I would need to have conversation with Lisa Hopkins to determine which school would be the most receptive to that and how we would go about implementing it and tracking it and seeing the validity of a process of that nature.
Okay.
Not something that's out of the question, just we just need to talk it through the team and determine what the best course of action would be to pilot something effectively.
I think the reason why I mentioned is not only could a little pilot like that test the reasonable assumptions about the need for the dispensers, but also would test the data to see about how many would be needed, which also might change cost assumptions higher or lower for the products. So it's just a thought. I know we're on track. It sounds like we're on track for full implementation for the start of the next school year, but this might be a chance, you know, folks aren't waiting to need these products till the next school year. So I think that would be appreciated, and would be a way to test it.
It's definitely something we discussed, Mr. Wilcox, as a possibility. In discussion with other school districts that have tried implementing this and talking to the vendors, it's found that when things like baskets are used and you just leave them as a bunch in a basket, not only is there an increased chance of vandalism, but there's also an increased chance that products are going to run out a lot faster as students grab handfuls, you know, out of the fear that there won't be any left the next time they come into the bathroom, right? So restocking at a certain rate is going to be difficult if there's a constant empty basket, right? Where now the custodial person is going to be constantly refilling throughout the day versus having a 100 count dispenser there and possibly having to refill maybe just a couple times a week. And so it's kind of a deterrent for increased use or increased taking of the products, whether it's for vandalism or just for personal use.
Okay, I appreciate that and thank you. And just a final comment on this was that I have heard some, because I recently talked to some Yale Daily News reporters and we had some of our students actually, I think, testified at the state in support of this policy when it was passed. So there is a lot of interest in the schools. I also have heard some folks saying that there are some teachers and maybe some nurses that are self-funding this, having supplies on hand for folks. And so it might also be, since we're going to be moving towards supplying these materials anyways, making sure that there's a supply now while this more perfect solution is in place, that the folks that are already supplying it aren't dipping into their own pockets for the funds to do this. So that's just another suggestion. My final question is connected not to vandalism or to this specifically, but one of the consistent complaints we've heard, and as I've scanned the independent article about the student government group on Friday in their meeting, is talking about stocking of supplies for paper towels, for soap, etc., for the restrooms. And I'm wondering if that tracked at all, or is there some sort of schedule? A lot of complaints is there just isn't the soap, there isn't the paper towels. I imagine if you have 350 restrooms or so in the district, you know, you're going to have staff move through and fill them. And at some point, you know, things might run out, but is it adequate what we're doing now? Because I'm hearing a lot of complaints in terms of restocking and checking to see if things need to be restocked.
So one of the things that does impact that, Mr. Wilcox, is the vandalism. We've had plenty of paper towel dispensers and paper dispensers that are ripped off by students, thrown out the windows, thrown into the toilet bowls, things of that nature. And so the building managers are restocked at least once a week with their supplies. And then throughout the day, they go out, and the evening, they go out and distribute inside of all the bathrooms. So it's day and night that it's done. Now, it may be that when a student goes to the bathroom, if there is no soap in the bathroom, that it may have either run out or it was utilized in the wrong way, or there's a damaged dispenser. But it is restocked throughout the day, and the building managers do have a stock on hand they keep, and they're restocked weekly.
Okay, so should anybody expect that when they walk into the school first thing in the morning that everything should have been restocked?
That is correct.
Okay. So I'll just say it was the comments from some of the students. It's just anecdotal reading it in the Independent that that's not always the case.
Okay.
So that might be something to be confirming or double checking, and because there might be an issue with custodial not having supplies, or maybe we don't have enough custodians. It might be based on people call out sick, etc. But that seems to be something that's a complaint listed by the students on Friday that matches what I've heard in the past.
All right, I'll definitely take a look into that, Mr. Wilcox.
Are there other comments or questions related to this? Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, thank you. I guess just a couple of quick topics. Thank you for bringing it up, and thank you for thank you, Dana, a particular staff member who's kind of been championing this cause or finding out more information about how the district can implement it. Good, great. You know, let's do it with all deliberate speed. I think there's some positive reason for it to be mandated, and so let's get it done. Part of me is thinking that the more we model and honor kind of who our students are and who they're growing into be, that this will translate into them and others doing the same. So I think we probably will run into some maybe predictable immaturity and also some vandalism. But my hope is that we can overcome that. So that's one comment. My other comment or suggestion is that it's probably going to be done, but that we synchronize the education across our school buildings with this implementation, so that there's a general uplift of culture around what we're doing, why we're doing it, what our expectations are, what our hopes are, and that students are more knowledgeable or at least aware than maybe they were before as to why this is happening. And I don't think necessarily our response should be, or our commentary should be, that it's a mandate that we're doing it, but that the district sees this as an opportunity for X, Y, and Z. And maybe we can do it in a way where our students will kind of respect that this is happening. My other thought is on the financial piece. Yeah, just looking at the numbers, this is definitely going to be a price tag associated with it. Now, my thought is, if we can electrify buses, then we can certainly do this. It won't be as expensive, but it is going to be a significant investment. And there might be other parties, state or otherwise, willing to contribute to this. I know that there are college students that have programs that are related to this topic, and maybe they have funding associated with it. Maybe not the amount our district needs, but maybe it can come. So yeah, thank you for kind of taking this matter forward and doing what needs to be done to implement what we can do.
Just to touch on what you talked about when it comes to a unified message across all the schools, One of the things that Lisa's been doing is that she's been talking with our district DEI coordinator, I believe that's Dr. Baker, to see if we can kind of take a unified approach to this under that umbrella, and then utilizing the school nurses and utilizing the selected coordinator in the schools to make sure that we have that unified message that's going to be delivered. And that is underneath that DEI umbrella, saying this is really about equity. Yes, it's a mandate, but it's really about equity. And so we are attempting to do that right now, Dr. Yap.
Great. And as you were talking, there might be a student champion or a student team champion this per school that works with the coordinator to kind of destigmatize and really bring this forward. If the students can talk about other topics in a way that elevates awareness and tries to bring the school together, whether it be around recycling or in a different environmental cost or finances, this certainly could be one. So perhaps part of either the pilot or the full rollout of this might be an opportunities for students to self-identify and say, hey, I would like to be a part of this team, this committee, this task force for this semester, this year, etc. That could be a powerful way for the message to get out and for the culture to elevate.
Yes, sir.
My final thought on this item is, would it be possible to get a listing of the single restrooms by building? The reason why I ask is I've been asked before at the LGBTQ plus youth task force, where they identify this as an issue and that there's not enough of them, just being able to see, okay, at Wilbur Cross, there's X number and they're located on first and second floor here, that kind of thing. Does that list exist?
I don't believe it exists, but I definitely something we can develop.
The reason why I'm asking is that I think it's very useful that the district took the time to put together the staffing guidelines report so that they could kind of see, this is what we think we should do, this is what we can do, and this is the gap. Be able to say that, you know, in general, we'd like to have, you know, one single person restroom per floor for student use. And that's a goal, maybe that's the appropriate goal. As you said, there isn't standards necessarily for this, but that's our local goal. And then this is where we meet that in these schools, and this is where it doesn't. I think that just kind of puts it out there so that we can kind of see that what the gap is and where the work needs to be in terms of trying to find the funding for the construction.
So, Mr. Wilcox, the facilities can definitely put together a report of the single-use bathrooms that are available in schools, but I think to really answer or to provide the information that you're requesting, I think we're going to have to put it out to the school administration, because even though the restrooms are identified as single use, they may not be identified for use by students. And so I think that's more of the question there. And so I can work with at the education department and discuss this with the administrators at each school and determine what they've identified as a single-use bathroom for students and get that from them and provide that in a single report.
I think something like that would be very useful, and it would also help show progress towards meeting the requirements of the transgender student policy, which says that, you know, students shall be able to use the restroom that corresponds to their consistently presented gender, and they should be able to use, any student should be able to use a private restroom when needed. So the ones that shall, ones that should, and so the single use ones are along with that, just trying to get a sense of that. So that sounds like a really good way to do it, because the schools, I guess, would know exactly what they're allowing the students in their buildings to do.
Yes, sir.
I don't know about a time frame for that. I don't want to. I know everybody's really busy, but if sometime in the next month or 6 weeks, maybe. I don't know how long it would take to put together.
I'm going to send out the query and follow up on those that haven't responded. So I would say probably a couple weeks.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, hearing nothing else on this item. The next thing is policy related. I noticed over the weekend that the policy 3516 safety and 3517 security of building and grounds were the old policies I pointed this out that they weren't the draft policies that we had looked at a couple months ago. Those were posted today, so I'm not really wanting to move something that hasn't been publicly available and available to the committee. So I'm not looking to move these items right now, but I would like to discuss if people have had a chance to look at the safety and security policies and to see if there are any issues. I would like to be able to move towards sending them to the governance committee at our next meeting. Mr. Lamb?
I did review each of these policies with the security team, and there was some minor changes related to the key policies that they needed to make. I could forward those to you.
Okay, would you forward them to the committee, please?
Yes.
Okay. And so the goal is that at our next meeting that these would be action items that we would vote to move on to the governance committee. And so I appreciate, Mr. Lamb, that you had your safety and security folks take a look at that. One thing I would point out is that one of the policies in the draft, we had added language that there should be some lockdown supplies available. And I just wanted to make sure that the version you were looking at had that. And because I imagine there might be some cost implications to that. I know there's kits available, but I do know that that's an issue that we've had people talk
Kits
about.
have been provided to all of the schools already.
Okay.
That was something that was part of the city safety and security task force requirements. So Dr. Finley and his team and myself and the facilities team have already worked to provide those.
Okay. All right. So to recap on this, the goal is that Mr. Lamb, if you'll forward those comments, that we'll take another look at it and then repost these for our next meeting with the goal of having the vote to move these. And then the second thing that's listed here is a discussion around the procurement policy. I want to thank Ms. DeMeo. She has sent me a lot of information, which I will make sure that the committee has as well. Information about the city's policies and procedures. Our new purchasing person, I'm blanking on this individual's name, Ms. DeMeo, as
Michael Trinick.
Mr. Trinick has pulled together some of the gaps where the city has different numbers than ours. We know this is a known issue that we need to fix. There was some charter changes that have gone into effect. And so it has gone through and highlighted those with the language. We also now have the city's change order policies and procedures. So that that was a very good request from the board on board members on last meeting that our policy, we don't have information about change orders. And so we now have what the city requirement is that we're going to have to live within. So we have a lot of great information. So we'll be pulling this together and also be putting this out hopefully to vote on, but if not, we're going to be very close to the the needed updates to the procurement policy. So I just wanted to thank you, Ms. DeMeo, and thank, I think it was also Selena Manning was pulling together a lot of things, as well as also our new purchasing person and probably a bunch of other people too, but those are the ones on the list. Are there any comments or questions related to this? All right. So I will be sharing that information with the rest of the committee to inform our fixes to the policy. And I think that'll be great. Seeing nothing else on the agenda, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
I second it. How do you vote, sir?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your work.